He's a kinsman, which means he is a close enough relative to the family of Elimelech and Naomi that if he chooses to, he can marry Ruth and have a child in the name of her dead husband to carry on his name. It was sort of a requirement in the law that God said, I want you to take care of widowed women. And this is the system, this is the mechanism by which I want you to take care of these widowed women who can't support themselves in the patriarchal society. God says, I love women, I'm going to take care of them. Here's what we're going to do. And so Boaz was a kinsman. He was one of these people who could do this thing. As you read a little bit further, we see something here. I just want to draw your attention to this. This is crazy. In verse 4, it says, just as Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters, and he greets them by saying, the Lord be with you. And they call back, the Lord bless you. What would it be like if your boss walked into work tomorrow morning, and he's like, the Lord be with you. And you respond, and the Lord bless you too. I think one half of that conversation would probably be faked, right? I don't know, maybe your boss is like that. But if that were to happen, I don't know if it would be easy for you to say, the Lord bless you also. You can see Boaz's character here. Number one, he's a guy who fears God. Number two, he's a guy who earns the respect of the people who work for him. They love him. They say, no, God should bless you. Yeah, you're our boss, but God should bless you. Because the more God blesses you, the more we're going to be blessed too, because you're that good of a boss. Boaz is a good man. And then keep going a little bit further, and something happens here. I printed this verse on your note sheet, but it's in Ruth 2:11. Look at this. Ruth meets up with Boaz. Boaz says this to Ruth, I've been told all about what you've done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. How you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you've done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you've come to take refuge. What you got to pick out of that is that Boaz is intrigued by this woman. He's interested. He's fascinated. You're that Moabite woman who shows up in Bethlehem with that bitter lady. Everybody knows Naomi. No one can stand her. And yet, you're here with her. That's fascinating. We find out that Boaz actually gives her about 50 pounds worth of food. If you translate the weights into modern equivalents, he gives her about 50 pounds worth of food on that one day. And if you're a poor person picking up just what the harvester's left over, you're generally not going to find 50 pounds of grain laying on the ground. You know, it's not going to happen. Boaz does a few tricks to get her extra stuff. And I think he likes her. I think he does. I think he's interested. But there's something else you got to see there. He uses this phrase, may you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you come to take refuge. Boaz says, you didn't come to Israel, you didn't come to Bethlehem, you didn't come to this land just because you're hanging out with Naomi. You've come to this land because you recognize there's a God in heaven, and you have placed yourself under him and said, I'm waiting on him, I'm relying on him to take care of me. And he says, may you be blessed for that. We'll come back to that in just a little bit. Ruth 3 is easy to summarize. What happens is Naomi begins to get her spunk back. And so she tells Ruth, okay, this Boaz guy seems to like you. How about you go up to him? And, okay, I'll just explain this real quick to you. This is what she says. She says, go up to him in the middle of the night while he's half drunk and sleeping, and lay down at his feet and lift the blanket off his feet, and then just stay there. And then when he wakes up, do whatever he tells you to do. Okay, so she does this. And she lifts the blanket off his feet, and, you know, it's about April, so it's cool enough so that when his feet are uncovered, he probably wakes up because of the uncomfortableness of his feet being cold. So he wakes up in the middle of the night, he turns over, and there's a lady laying down at his feet, and he's like, what are you doing? And so Ruth sits up and she goes, it's Ruth. And she doesn't wait around for him to tell her what he wants, what he thinks needs to happen in this weird sort of situation. Instead, she just says, you're my kinsman. Cover me with the corner of your garment too. And all of this is symbolic. What it means is, would you propose to me? That's the phrasing, basically. Because when a man would propose to a woman, sometimes part of the symbol would be to place one of his garments over her. And so she says, would you put the corner of your blanket over me? Your feet are cold, so am I. But he knew what she was asking. She says, would you give me a ring? And what he says is, okay, thank you for choosing me. Because you could have any of these other guys, and you picked me. And there we find out Boaz is a whole lot older than her. And something's going on where Ruth, because Naomi said pick him, she picks him. And there's this crazy story. But what happens is, here are the blanks if you're keeping blanks. It's just simply this. Ruth and Boaz choose each other. She chooses him. He chooses her. And then in the morning, she wakes up. He says, okay, get out of here before people see that you're here and think something funny happened. And so she gets out of there, and then Boaz says, I'm going to do the right thing. And we're into chapter 4 now. Chapter 4, Boaz does the right thing. What he does there is he says, there's another relative closer to you than I am. And he gets first dibs. So I'm going to go and talk to him about it. So he does. He goes and talks to this other guy. And he does this weird little conniving thing. He says, okay, here you go, to this other dude. He says, you can buy Naomi's land. The land that came from her son, who's now dead. You can buy that land. And the guy says, well, I'll take the land. That sounds great. He says, but if you take the land, you get the girl. And some reason he didn't want the girl. Why? Because the first child she has gets legal credited to her original husband. And so that means the land that they own gets passed to that dude. And so the new guy says, wait a minute. I have children of my own. They have an inheritance of their own. I'm not going to jeopardize their inheritance by bringing this other lady in the mix. So, sorry, you can have her. And Boaz is like, yes. So that's the first thing. Boaz does the right thing. Number 2, Boaz then marries Ruth. And I want to show you in Ruth chapter 4 how this whole thing ends. Beginning in verse 11. The elders and all those at the gate said, we're witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman. May your family be that like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. File that for just a moment. We're going to come back there. So Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. Then he went to her and the Lord enabled her to conceive.